building this BMI app, we completed the view and the model. Now we need to build the glue that connects the two together. Specifically, when the button in the view is tapped, the controller must be activated, and when it does, it should fish out the weight and the height from the view, send them to the model. The model will perform the computation. We tested that. It works. It returns the answer to the controller. The controller should take the answer and poke it in the view in the proper place. So the needed mechanism are V to C, C to M, and then the return path M to C, C to V. Let's see how is that done. In Android Studio, remember the story starts in the view. So let's go to the view, specifically when this button is tapped. What happened? The view in that case will go to a property of the button called onClick. Here it is, right? And currently it goes nowhere, right? So we need to be able to glue this to the controller by building in the controller a method that can be triggered. This is called a listener. The header of that method is always the same. Public void some name and some parameter. The name is anything you want. I'm going to call it glue. And the parameter has to be of type view. View is not known to Android Studio. You press Alt Enter and it gets imported. Now that we have a place to go to when the button is tapped, go back to the view and go back to this onClick property and drop this down, and suddenly the method we just added popped up. Connect it, and now you have view talking to the controller. Inside the controller, now that you are awakened and you know that the button is tapped, you conclude that there must be some entries for the weight and the height. Go ahead and grab them. To do that, there's a method called FindViewByID, and you give it an ID. You want the weight box, all right? And r.id is just the syntax for grabbing views, and you need to cast this as an EditText. Again, this needs to be imported. So what's happening here is that we're telling the view, look for a widget with this particular ID, give it back to us. It returns it as a generic widget. It doesn't know what type. We're telling it we know it's an EditText. Take it and let's put it somewhere. So EditText, you can call it, for example, W. All right. So we fished out the box itself, not the entry inside it, just the entire widget. We brought it to the controller. I copied this. Gonna paste it because I need also the height. So instead of r.id.the weight box, I want the height box. All right. Now those two need to be you need to dig inside them to get the actual entry. So the actual weight string that was entered by the user, the weight string, you take the weight box and you say get the text inside it and turn it to a string. And you do the same for the height. You take the height widget, you get the text, and you call it the height. So that's, if you like, this is how the controller spoke to the view and fished out the two entries. Next step is to communicate with the model. The first thing we need to do is to turn them into real numbers. So double, weight double, I'm going to call it. I'm going to call my model, BMI model, and invoke the method which is to double. It takes the weight as a string and returns it as a double. Copy paste to do the height as a double. You send it the height as a string. And next you go ahead and compute the index. So double, give it any name. For example, index is from the BMI model. I'm gonna say get me this BMI. I'm gonna send it the weight as a double, the height as a double. Finally, the BMI is turned into a string by calling BMI model format this particular index. So the first chunk was to get the information from the view. The next chunk was to communicate with the model. Now the last chunk is to poke the answer in the answer label. So again, let's fish out the label which holds the answer. And remember, this is not an edit text, it's a text view, it's a label. Alright, again, Alt Enter to import that. And this will give us text view, call it answer. We fished it out. What do you want to do with it? Poke in it. So answer, not get text, but rather set text. Take this BMI that I have. And that ends the role of the controller. So one more time. Grab the entries. First of all, wake up when the button is tapped. Grab all the entries made by the user. Communicate with the model. In this particular case, we turn them to real number. We compute the index as a real number, and then we turn the index to a string and round it and so on. And finally, the last part is to poke the answer in the view. So that takes care of the last piece.